Hey there, I'm Emily Evers, ACT's Advancement Director. While you might know me as normally being responsible for ACT's fundraising and communications, what you might not know is that I come from a big family of creatives and artists. For this video and the next one we publish on our Stay Home, Stay Creative channel, I'm going to walk you through 2 creative activities with something that a lot of us have laying around the house, old magazines. The lesson we're going to walk you through today is the steps of making beads from the magazines. From there you can make jewelry, keychains, framed art baskets. I'll walk you through some of those ideas when we get to the end of the video. Here's a list of supplies to gather. 1, like I said, magazines. Make sure you check with whoever is in your household to make sure everyone who lives with you is done reading them. Since we'll be cutting out a lot of the content, we don't want to cut one up before someone's done with it. We also will need toothpicks, and if you don't have toothpicks at home, you could instead grab a kebab skewer or a wooden dowel, or if you have chopsticks from takeout, or even a knitting needle, as long as it's not wooden. Just keep in mind that it's going to get covered in glue, so it either needs to be something you can wash the glue off afterward, or something that you can throw away and isn't something you're worried about getting a little messy. For glue, Elmer's works really well, but if you don't have Elmer's at home, you could do Mod Podge, or I saw there's a lot of recipes on Pinterest to make your own glue at home with some baking supplies. So if you're stuck and can't get Elmer's, let us know and we'll send you a link to make your own glue at home too. You'll also need a pair of scissors. It'll be easiest to get the shapes cut out with scissors, but if you don't have them, you can also just fold and tear the magazine sheets too. So the first step is to search for sheets in those magazines that you want to turn into beads. I personally looked out for bold, bright patterns and that covered a large portion of the page. We're eventually going to be cutting those sheets into long triangular strips, so keep that in mind, that whatever you're looking for, you're going to want it to cover most of the page and not just a little bit, because otherwise you probably won't see it. Okay, so another thing to keep in mind is that whatever's on the page, you're not going to see a lot of detail of it. Or if you remember some of the beads I showed you earlier, you can kind of tell that you really don't know what was on this page to begin with. Those bright colors I looked for, it's kind of funny what might have been on the page originally, because you're not really going to know once the bead comes into shape. So I've got this whole sheet full of Cheetos. Those aren't going to be obvious on the beads, but what I really wanted was that bright orange color. And then this was kind of funny. I found this whole sheet of, those are Fruit Loops. So I'm going to cut those down and make that into a colorful bead as well. And then as you cut these triangles, just keep in mind that the widest part of the triangle is going to be how wide your bead is. So if you want some really wide beads, you're going to start out with one that's about an inch wide at the widest part. Or if you want something really small, you're going to go as small as you can and then cut that triangle as skinny as you possibly can. It might take you a few tries, so I would start with a sheet that you don't really care that much about the pattern. That's also important to keep in mind as you start rolling your beads, because I found that I used way too much glue in the beginning. I ruined a couple beads. Like, I've got some that are stuck onto these toothpicks forever. So it's okay to make mistakes, but if you're really attached to one of your patterns, just make sure you don't do that first, because it might take you a few tries. So as you can see, I've got my first Fruit Loop triangle cut, and I'm going to spend some time cutting a bunch of those. Alright, so now you have all your triangles cut out, and the next step is to roll them into the beads. So you're going to grab your toothpicks and make sure you have your glue ready for this step. I also happen to have some wax paper around, so I laid that down on the table just to make it easier for cleanup. But if you're using Elmer's, it should wash off any surface, but it's always good to be safe than sorry. So when you grab your toothpick or dowel or chopstick, you're gonna hold the end of the long strip at the end and fold that over. So you can see that, I just have it wrapped around the toothpick to keep it in place. Once I have it folded, I'm gonna push really hard so it doesn't move around, and then I'm gonna start rolling it this way. And I don't need to make it super tight because that's one of the ways they get stuck on the toothpicks. But I'm gonna keep going until I'm about 2/3 of the way down this triangular strip. And then that's when I'm gonna add the glue. And it's okay if these aren't like super perfect and they're kind of crooked. They kind of gives them a little bit of character, so don't worry too much about that. But you can see that I've got this rolled just a little bit here. And then for the glue, I am going to just take the Elmer's and put it all the way down the last part of that strip. And like I said earlier, I used way too much glue when I first started. But do know it's pretty messy and you're gonna get it all over your hands no matter how hard you try. So once you've got that glue running down the last part of this strip, you're gonna start rolling it the rest of the way. And one of the reasons why it's nice to have toothpicks is you can use a bunch of them, because eventually they just get really sticky and it's hard to work with them, or the beads get stuck on there. So as I rolled this, the glue got kind of all over the place. I'm just putting it all over the bead just to make sure it's coated and to make sure that all the pieces are gonna stay rolled up once I use it. So once I've done that and I have the bead, and don't worry that it's gonna be a little bit white at first because the Elmer's is gonna dry clear. So I take it off the toothpick so it doesn't get stuck on there. I'm gonna set it on this wax paper, and that's another reason why it's nice to have the wax paper. Now I've got all of these strips I cut out. I did a bunch of the Fruit Loop ones and a bunch of this bright blue color. So I'm gonna roll all of those. Find that this gets a little bit trickier once your hands get covered in glue. Sometimes I take a break to wash or peel all the glue off. But once I've got 2/3 of the strip rolled, I am adding the glue and rolling it the rest of the way. And the glue is kind of oozing out between the strips as I roll them close together, and that's perfect because I'm going to use it to make sure the entire bead is coated so that it all stays close together. There are some other shapes you can try cutting out to make different shaped beads. If you're interested in checking those out, once you try these, the plain triangles out, let us know. We'll send you the link to those. All right, so my hands are covered in glue, the beads are sitting here, and they're going to need some time to dry. So we're gonna take a little break. If you need something to do in the meantime, you can go to the rest of our Stay Home, Stay Creative channel and do a dance lesson or do a drumming and percussion lesson. We've got a few of those linked in the description, and we'll be back soon. All right, so now you have your very own homemade magazine beads. From here, you can do a bunch of different things with them. I tried making a keychain with some of the beads I made last week just to try that out. It turned out kind of small, so I'm gonna try to add some more to that and see how it turns out. I've also got some wire, so I'm thinking I'll try to make a bracelet and maybe some earrings. If you don't have wire or jewelry twine at home, you could also use some fishing line. Maybe you have someone who fishes in your house. The point is to get creative and figure out how you can use them. I saw some pretty extravagant things on Pinterest when I looked around. There was one chandelier made out of magazine beads. There was also a vase. Maybe that's something to try down the road, but definitely flex your creativity to make something special and send us a photo once you're done. Thanks for watching our Stay Home and Stay Creative channel today with Artists Creating Together. Be sure to follow the channel so you don't miss any other virtual lessons, and make sure to save those old magazines, because our next video we're going to have a different magazine inspired activity.